Hey folks, John Becker here, Union Township trustee and former state representative from Claremont County, bringing to you the June issue of the Becker Report. And if all goes well, this will go out in the next day or two. Hopefully, I'll get it out tonight. Hey, but anyway, today is June the 29th, 2022, and I'm just going to go over this edition with you because it's rather lengthy. There's a lot of topics to cover in here. And some of these I'm just going to read to you, and I don't normally do that. So I'm starting out with the Roe v. Wade decision to overturn it. I think better known as the Dobbs decision now. And I get into a number of Q&A points with this. And I'm just going to read the questions and look up the Becker Report, and you can see what my answers are. And to get to the Becker Report, just go to beckergop.com and click on current issue. And at the bottom of that page, you can see where you can subscribe. Just put in your name and your email address. Also subscribe to my YouTube channel while you're at it. So I answer the questions, my body, my choice. Why do I use the word fertilization rather than conception? What about birthing people's rights? What the hell are birthing people? I don't answer that question, but I do answer the question about, say, mother's rights. What if I'm personally opposed to abortion, but don't want to be imposing my will on others? What about the rape and incest exceptions? What about the severe fetal abnormalities? Now, these things do occur. They're rare, but they do happen. What about the life of the mother? What about support for mothers who choose to raise their children? And I get into the numbers about how many homicides there are by abortion that have been committed since 1973. And also link to a graph because those numbers aren't linear and they have been coming down in recent years, so that's good. And also with the Dobbs decision, I think the abortion rate is going to be plummeting, which is really a good thing. And these questions I want to read to you also. So this is going forward. This is what every politician needs to be asked. So these are the questions I came up with. Of course, these are just draft questions, and the pro-life organizations that are out asking these questions, they got their own surveys, and this is just kind of, I guess, maybe something to add to the surveys or use these to maybe edit what they're currently asking. Do you support protecting innocent human life, or do you support a culture of death? Do you accept the science of DNA that proves that a human being has been created during fertilization? If not, please explain at what point a developing child becomes a human being. Explain in what way a human being is different from a person. Compare and contrast your answer with the slavery debate of the 1860s. Are all innocent born and preborn human beings worthy of being protected in law? If not, please explain which innocent born or preborn human beings do not have the right to life and why. Then I get into the, so there's 3 states out on the West Coast that are calling themselves abortion sanctuaries. Well, conservatives always refer to the the West Coast as a left coast, derisively so. And now I'm referring to the left coast as the death coast, since they see killing babies seems to be very important to them, and they're pulling out all the stops to make that happen. And also, I make the observation that I'm thinking of Pelosi and others that are so horrified by children getting gunned down, as they should be. Any normal person would, but yet they're adamantly supporting of killing babies in the womb. So the same kids that were horrifyingly killed in Uvalde, Texas, those siblings that are being killed in the womb, they fully support that. So it's just a bit of a hypocrisy there that I keep scratching my head over. Then I get into the gun control debate. And so now gun control is called gun safety. Well, I personally support gun safety and always have been. I'm going to read this little section to you. I encourage people to get training in gun safety and marksmanship. For example, never point a gun at anybody. Always assume every gun is loaded. Never put your finger on a trigger until you're ready to pull it. Check the backstop of your target, and the list goes on. So I talk more about Uvalde, Texas then, and that nobody was there to shoot back. And with tongue in cheek, I have a little section here about melting down automobiles when they're used to, run down people, say in a parade in Wisconsin. And then I get into a little section on what is it that gun control people want. So this is from personal experience. When I was in the General Assembly, I would have the gun control people. I would meet with them from time to time. They would do their rallies and their gun control day, and they would meet with all the legislators. So of course I'd meet with them in my office, and I would listen, and we always had good conversations. And usually it was one person there was kind of the leader, and the other people there were just supporters, kind of there along for the ride, and that's fine. So I would always ask this question, okay, so what is it that you want? And they would give me their list of demands, whether it's red flag laws or, ban on semi-automatic, whatever it is. And I would listen, I would take notes, and then I would look over it and I would say, okay, well, let's say and this is a true story. I would do this repeatedly. I did it for 8 years. So let's say we do this. Let's say the General Assembly gives you everything you're asking for. We do it all. We sign it into law. It's a done deal. Now my question is this. The next time there's a mass shooting, next time there's a school shooting, you're going to be in my office asking for what? And then it was crickets. Because it's pretty obvious they're just using incrementalism to ban guns. And by the way, they always start their conversations with, oh yeah, I'm a gun supporter, and oh yeah, I grew up with guns, and oh yeah, I do this and do that, blah, 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 and support guns. Well, then you get into all the reasons that guns are bad and we should have all these restrictions and red flag laws. By the way, on the topic of red flag laws, I don't support taking away people's property. If you got a bad person out there who's evil, incarcerate them. We we used to do that back in the days with mental institutions. If they're dangerous enough that they need to have their personal property taken away, then they're dangerous enough to be locked up. So yeah, if they're bad people and have reason to do harm, they got mental problems. They should not be in society. They're a danger to others or themselves. Lock them up. Don't be taking away their firearms or any other property. Because obviously, if they want to drive their car through a Christmas parade, if they want to fill a van full of gasoline or fertilizer and drive it into a school building or drive it anywhere, there's lots of ways to blow up things and kill people. It's not just firearms. These people are dangerous. Get them off the streets. Then could the governor weaponize the Department of Health and call firearms a health nuisance? Yeah, he sure could. After what he did with the COVID-19 disaster and the way he crashed the economy and tackling that. I mean, is there really any powers the governor doesn't have, according to this current governor anyway? And he got into a section on the AR-15 rifle, and that was educational for me because I don't own an AR-15, never have. I did have an AK-47 at one time. I've always been kind of curious about the fascination with the AR-15, so I've been learning a lot about that. It's very interesting, and frankly, I want one. Then I talk about Joe Biden being wrong again. So, he made some stupid comment about, the Second Amendment doesn't protect, doesn't allow people to own cannons. Well, the historical record is that the Second Amendment, at the time it was written and into the War of 1812 and even beyond, that the most advanced weapons of war were privately owned. Battleships back in the day were the most advanced weapons of war. And there was lots of cannons and lots of gunpowder on those battleships. And yes, some of them were privately owned. So yeah, there's no question that the Second Amendment and the words shall not be infringed meant that yes, every individual had the right to own the world's most advanced weapons of war. So you might ask, well, how does that apply today? The world's most advanced weapons of war includes nuclear weapons, for goodness sakes. Well, yeah, it sure does. But the Constitution hasn't changed, which gets into the state constitutions. The states have the right to regulate those types of things, and many of them do, of course. Then I get into some history on the availability of firearms, like back in the 50s and 60s. Firearms, kids would take their firearms to school. There was never a problem. So what has changed? It's a cultural shift that has changed, and the problem is really parenting in single-family homes. And the coarsening of our society, the things that had been taboo at one time are now mainstream and even celebrated. I think that's where you get into the problems with people going nuts with whether it's firearms or driving cars through Christmas parades or whatever the case may be. Then I switch into a section on COVID. That's the issue that will just never go away. And when I do the COVID section, it's just new information I'm finding, new studies and such. And I always put the study in there where that quote, the CDC's own data, or I'll link to it, their own data from the CDC shows that the masks are virtually useless. So that's still on their website. So I keep quoting it. And every time I see somebody with a mask, I keep thinking that same thing. If it makes them feel better, hey, God bless them. Hey, wear masks all day long for all I care. Just don't want to be shoving it down my throat or anybody else's throats for that matter. And then the last section I get, or the main section I would say, is just what's going on in Union Township. The biggest update I have there is with the Krogers. People have been asking about that, and I'm going to break the news right here. So it is going to be a marketplace Kroger that's going in where the Sears used to be. There's a lot of questions about what is Kroger's intent to do with the Sears building. There's a lot of speculation out there, a lot of rumors going around. So I have seen the plans. And we're going to be approving those at a trustees meeting. I think the July meeting is we're going to approve those, if I'm not mistaken. And they're going to tear down the Sears store. They're going to build a new store called a Marketplace. It's going to be 122,000 square feet, something like that. And it's going to include, drive-up pharmacy. It's going to include even a Starbucks is going to be in there. The gas station that's currently in its current location is actually moving. It's going to be in the parking lot between the Wendy's, the current Wendy's, and the current Sears. In between there is going to be the gas pumps. Going to be 18 gas pumps there. Nothing's changing with the Wendy's. The Sears again is going to get torn down and kind of relocated a little bit. It's going to be separated from the mall. It's going to be freestanding, and it's going to be pointing a little bit. I think more to the south, if I'm not mistaken, or changing the orientation just a little bit on it. So that's the big news out of Kroger, and of course that store across the street is going to close. The Mount Carmel store, don't know. It's still open for speculation, and the Kroger hasn't made any announcements on that. So then I linked to at the last trustees meeting doing a deep dive on the 2021 expenses. At the next trustees meeting, I'm hoping to do a deep dive on the 2022 expenses the first 6 months. So I don't have that data yet, and when I get the data, which will be after they close the June reports, then if I have time to get it together before the next meeting, I'm planning to do a presentation on that. And then the last couple of things on the Becker Report is my restaurant visits. I got I think 88 different locations. That'd be restaurants, including food trucks and fish fries and such, is up to a total of 88. And then the last section is the usual stuff. I have the video archives. I have what's the video? It's called Video Central. And that's just things I find on YouTube that people might find interesting, or at least I found them interesting. So I put those out there. And then the last thing on the newsletter is the event calendar. And then what I want you to do, if you want to continue to stay tuned here, I got a 14-minute video that's attached to the end of this video. That's the presentation that I did at the last Union Township meeting, which was a financial deep dive into the expenses. So I got a couple more graphs, and you can see those graphs on the video, or you can also go out to the Union Township website and download those graphs for yourself if you want to. And in the Becker Report, I'm linked to all that. So my contact information is at the end of this video, and if you want to get in touch with me, contact information is there. Please subscribe to the Becker Report and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And again, it's BeckerGOP.com. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
We have a presentation on 2021 expense deep dive by Trustee John Becker.
Okay, so first thing I want you to notice is I learned how to do a watermark. I'm very proud of myself. Next slide. You've seen this before. So this is the full year 2021 income and expense statement. This is what I use as a the baseline that anything I do in terms of any kind of reporting analysis from the detail has to tie out to this report, and I make sure that it does. If it doesn't, then I'm asking questions, trying to figure out what happened. So what I'm doing with these various presentations, I'm looking at 2021 because it's it's a full year of data, and I'm going to start doing 2022 at some point. And once I get those numbers, what do they mean? So at least having 2021, knowing what those are, and looking at 2022, I expect our expenses are going to go up. Whose expenses aren't going up? The question is going to be how much are they going up and why, and making adjustments or looking at making potential adjustments where we're going to need to. So that number at the very bottom, 69,412, is the number I'm going to look to tie to. So this first graph, and I just have a couple of brief takeaways on this one. I've only got, I think, 3 of these. This is the total, which includes the pass-throughs, which ties out to the 69,412,000. So the pass-throughs is the biggest amount of that, and of those pass-throughs, 23 million of the 29 million, 23 million is the bond anticipation note. We got another 4 million in transfers, and the rest of it is special improvement districts and lighting. The other thing I guess I want to mention on this, I'll go to the next slide and talk about it there. So on this next slide then, this is what I call real money. So this is $40 million, and this is taking the noise, or at least most of the noise, out of the data. So it takes out all the pass-through data. So, and I'm kind of proud of myself with the colors here: red for fire, blue for police, the parks are green, the roads are black, so I try to get creative with some of this stuff. So as you can see, half of our total expenses of real money, $40 million, taking out the pass-throughs, half of it is simply police and fire, and they're split just about 50-50. So at the bottom, in the gold, those are money we pay out to the schools. So those are TIF payments that we do to make the schools whole. I'm going clockwise here. So next to the schools, you get that blue wedge near the bottom. That's capital, $4.3 million. And capital, that's just kind of a category I made up looking at some of the expenses. And this expense chart I use, it's called a expense audit trail. And this expense audit trail, it is every detail, every line item, every invoice of every expenditure. And it was 9,000-something, 9,300 line items and some 8,600 invoices, and I looked at every one of them. And fortunately, there was nothing on there called other or miscellaneous, but there was a lot of stuff called administrative. So where it made sense to put administrative in some of these department categories, I did. And others I did not, so I did look at it real hard. Now, is anybody else going to look at 9,600 line items of data to try to figure this out? No normal person would. I've been called a lot of things, and normal is not one of them. So on the second graph, or I'm sorry, this graph, after capital, so the capital is economic development, is land acquisition, improvements. It also included the firehouse, because I thought about putting the firehouse expenses that we just built on Beechwood into the fire expense, but decided just to leave that under capital because it was a major construction item. Also, TIF payments are in capital. And the next wedge, that goldish wedge, is debt, and that's principal and interest that we have on the debt. And what I want to point out, this continues to bother me. What I want to point out is we spend more money on debt, principal and interest on debt, than we spend on roads and parks combined. And the amount of debt that we've had has always been concerning to me. We got interest rates going up. The biggest piece of this is that bond anticipation note that I've talked about in the past. That's $23 million. And the problem with that is it is an interest rate swap with Royal Bank of Canada. And we in addition to the principal and interest, we also include true-up payments as part of all of that. So our fixed rate on that is 3.9%. And what I was told is that once the LIBOR rate, and LIBOR, that's an international benchmark, stands for London Interbank Offered Rate, something like that. So it's an international benchmark, and when that LIBOR rate gets up to 3.9, then there may be some decisions to make regarding that bond anticipation note. So I'm not sure how worried I need to be about all this, but it does concern me, and I'm continuing to watch it. So on the LIBOR rate, and it does track with the Fed funds rate, when I started doing this in March, the LIBOR rate was 1.38, in April it was 2.28, in May it was 2.67, and today's rate is 3.37. So LIBOR continues to go up and continues to concern me. Then the next wedge, the black one, as you're getting closer to the top now, is roads, 2.4 million. So in that, salaries and benefits are part of that, equipment, the resurfacing, so your asphalt expense. Also our TID payments, the Claremont County Transportation Improvement District, and I tell you, we get that money back and a whole lot more. That's really a great deal for Union Township. Traffic control expenses, salt, drainage, fuel, also liability and property casualty insurance is also part of that. So, and then the green wedge parks, similarly, salaries, benefits, equipment, rehabbing the tennis courts we did back in 2021, ball fields, shelters, dead tree removal, mowing, pond maintenance, kind of stuff you do in the parks. That's all what's in those numbers. Cemetery, same thing, salaries, benefits, equipment, fuel, the lantern lighting ceremonies in there, supplies, utilities. The last wedge up there at the top, or not the last wedge, but the smallest wedge, zoning. Again, salaries, benefits, equipment, legal ads, the Board of Zoning Appeals, zoning boards, all that goes into zoning. So that last one, as you get too close to the top there, other. So the question would be, well, what is in other? And I did an entire graph just breaking out other. So that's the last graph that I have. And so that's $3 million worth. So of that $3 million worth, salaries and benefits is the biggest piece of that. And I think Mr. Campbell and I sat down, we were talking about that. I think there's like 10 different people that are in administration. And so what happens in corporate America with these kind of, you can just think of them as overhead expenses. Most of the stuff on this slide is overhead. In corporate America, what companies would do is, and what's a procedure called cost accounting. They would take these overhead expenses and allocate them to the various departments and divisions and look at profitability, because profitability is determined by total cost. Well, the total cost of the headquarters, keeping lights on and paying executive salaries, that all gets distributed somehow, some way, down to those various profit center departments. We don't need to do anything like that in government. I'm just pointing out this is the overhead expense, and it could be allocated out, but it really doesn't make sense to do so. But also there are some benefits in here that are not in some of the other departments. The flexible spending account expenditures is also in that. So again, moving down clockwise, you have maintenance. That's HVAC, sign removal. Sign removal, that's the commercial signs you see out on the roads everywhere, advertising whatever, that people just kind of randomly put up. We pay somebody to pick those up and keep the township cleaned up. So that sign removal's in these numbers. Also landscaping and repairs. The next one, that gold area, that's the post office. That's also a source of revenue. The taxes and fees, then, is the blue wedge toward the bottom. And so that's audit fees, and it is real estate taxes. That would be on commercial buildings that we rent out, because like on this building, for example, there would not be any taxes. There's a TQL wedge at the bottom, kind of the goldish color, rust color. Those are JED payments to TQL per our economic development agreement. Utilities is the black wedge there, $218,000, and that's going to be the usual suspects: Dukes and St. Bell, Verizon, also our water and sewer expense. That green wedge, systems. So that was something, again, that's a category I just kind of made up. So systems is just computer expenses. So it's computers, it's networking, it's Wi-Fi, cloud services, security software, and the such. So over on the far left, it's kind of a grayish wedge, outreach. Again, I kind of just made that term up too. So that was outreach. That's stuff I'm calling like concerts, fireworks. We have a lobbyist. And by the way, the lobbyist was instrumental in getting us $122,000 for the pickleball courts that we're going to be putting in at Klepper Park. So also the chamber, our newsletter, junk days. So I'm calling all that outreach because it's all for kind of public consumption. After that, it's kind of a pinkish wedge, is legal and CPA fees. Most of that is legal. That includes like ads, audit costs, that sort of thing. Supplies is the next one up, that bluish wedge, $58,000, just office, janitorial, sundries, that sort of thing. And insurance is that smallest wedge, and that is property casualty and liability. So some of these expenses were allocated to various departments. This is really the overhead expense, most of it really having to do with this building. And with that, gentlemen, that was my detailed deep dive on 2021. Are there any questions?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
John, you put a lot of time into this. You did a lot of time. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I actually put more time into last week's report, but it was just harder to work with.
Yeah.
It was various reports, and I'm trying to pull stuff out of PDF files and categories called other, and that was challenging.
Yeah.
Using this detailed audit report was relatively easy, because everything was, not everything, a lot of stuff was kind of pre-organized. So this is police, this is fire. It was easy to pick stuff out. It was just when you got to that administrative column, it's like, what is this? And that's where I'll spend a lot of time kind of analyzing it. And then once I summarized that all by category, then I just did a pivot table, which then summarized everything in real nice, compact. And from there, it's where I drew the graphs.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. With the, what's your high-level summary on the pass-throughs again, or is that kind of more to come a little bit?
Well, no, so the pass-throughs, most of that is that bond anticipation note,
Yeah.
that we renew every year. It's that was initially really confused me until I sat down with our finance expert to, have them explain it to me, that it's a,
That's the 25 million, yeah.
yeah, I think it's like 23 million, and this dates back to when Doug Walker was the administrator. So it's pretty old, and I think it's a 30-year bond, 40, I don't remember, 30 or 40-year bond, and it simply gets renewed every year, and the benefit to us is that fixed rate of 3.9. But again, with LIBOR going up and quickly, I just don't know what happens when LIBOR hits 3.9 or 4% in that range. I don't think we all turn into pumpkins or anything goes crashing to a halt. I guess my concern is that it's going to change the terms of renewing that bond in the future. Yeah. And that category called interest in principal and interest, I'm afraid is going to be going up substantially. And that's what concerns me. And it's already, like I said, more than we're paying on roads and parks combined.
All right.
I was on the previous slide.
Great to look at that, between the roads and parks combined. So, yeah, and I remember from our earlier meetings this year, our regular scheduled meetings, though, you're addressing the LIBOR rate, and pay attention to that as far as the importance of, is it going to continue the strategy of refinancing it basically every year, or have something locked in?
We'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it.
Well, it's coming a lot faster than I think you probably ever anticipated, seeing it rise to 3.3 already.
Yes. So I believe we're going to renew that bond, I think in August. And there's something on tonight's agenda to take care of that. But I would say after August, I think all bets are off regarding the future of that bond. I don't know.
And thank you. Thanks for the time you put into it.